Hey, this is Brian Chilton, BellatorChristi.com. I wanted to let you know we've been hoping to get some more information on the YouTube channel. Unfortunately, YouTube has changed. I was using my phone to live stream the podcasts as I do them, and unfortunately, YouTube has now recently changed their criteria, saying that you have to have 1,000 subscribers now before you can use the mobile device to live stream the podcasts. So what I'm going to have to end up doing is it looks like maybe doing Facebook Live on the Bellator Christian account or on my personal account. Look me up at Brian underscore, or actually I think it's Pastor Brian Chilton on Facebook, and link up there. You can follow me, or you can send me a friend request. Either way. But you can see possibly the live podcast there as I get them going. Sometimes doing the podcast, it isn't a time where I'm able to actually go live sometimes. So what I'm going to try to do is record videos of the podcasts. Unfortunately, this means I'm not going to be able to take live questions on the air on the YouTube channel, but I would be able to on the Facebook account. So I just want to come on here and let you know. I appreciate everyone who subscribed. We'll have we'll have some videos coming up. Uh, maybe if you have some personal questions, you want to do it on Facebook. Excuse me, on the YouTube account. If you're watching this on YouTube, and that's the main way you receive information about Bellator Christi, then what I would encourage you to do, if you have a question that you want answered, go to BellatorChristi.com, and there's a link there on the website where you can submit your question, and I'll get the message as soon as it comes through and try to answer your question either by a podcast, a YouTube video, or by an article or something, maybe a combination of all three for all we know. But I do appreciate your support. And on this edition of the Bellator Christi podcast this week, I'm going to talk about something that William Lane Craig mentioned on his Reasonable Faith podcast, and that is the evidence for the resurrection being like a three-legged stool. And there are three legs to this stool, and I'm going to get more into it on the podcast. But the three legs of the stool are this: one, the evidence for the empty tomb. And on the podcast, I'm going to talk about the Jerusalem factor. The message of the empty tomb began in Jerusalem, the very place where Jesus was crucified. Okay, so the Jerusalem factor. Also, it was very early. You see, if you look at the early creedal material in the New Testament, 1 Corinthians 15, many other things, you'll see that the message early on denoted the fact that Jesus was crucified, he died, he was buried, and he rose again. So the empty tomb is implied and outright stated in some of the sermon summaries in Acts, which are very early, that Jesus was in fact buried and was alive again. The connection of Joseph of Arimathea can't be understated, or excuse me, can't be overstated, but because Joseph of Arimathea would have been a well-known individual, everyone would have known where his tomb was located, and so that being said, someone could have easily gone to the tomb and seen where Joseph of Arimathea's tomb was, look and see whether or not the tomb was empty, as the disciples said it was, and could have easily checked out. If the tomb was occupied, that's the end of the Christian message, at least the end of the resurrection message. The first leg of the stool was the empty tomb. The second leg of the stool was the post-mortem appearances. And on the podcast, I described the importance of women, the role that women had in the message of the post-mortem appearances. Group hallucinations, despite what you've heard, group hallucinations are not possible. You can have an illusion, but not a hallucination. Okay, multiple people saw Jesus alive. Jesus was seen over the course of a 40-day period. Okay, so it wasn't just a one-time event. People saw Jesus alive for 40 days. And then, you have to understand the Jerusalem factor, that Jesus was seen alive in the very city where he had been crucified. And then again, the early creeds emphasize that Jesus was seen alive. 1 Corinthians 15, that can't be overstated either. That dates to within months of the actual crucifixion of Jesus. So there again, not enough time for a legend to have developed. So the first leg of the stool is the evidence for the empty tomb. The second leg of the stool is for post-mortem appearances. The third leg of the stool is for the origins, evidence of the origins of the disciples' belief in the resurrection. And on the podcast, I'll mention how uh, the final resurrection was the belief that they had, but not that the Jesus was going to immediately arise from the grave. They were anticipating it to happen at the end of time. So they weren't influenced by any preconceived notion that they had that Jesus was going to rise from the dead. They weren't influenced by a type of Greco-Roman cult or some type of philosophy. And then but the reality is they came to believe in the resurrection of Jesus, the literal bodily resurrection of Jesus, because they saw the risen Jesus alive from the dead. So I hope you'll go and check out the podcast, bellatorchristi.com. It's also available on iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, as well as Google Play. Again, I thank you for watching. Be sure to listen to the latest podcast, the Bellator Christi podcast, on bellatorchristi.com. This is Brian Chilton saying God bless, and we hope to see you again real soon.